Sometimes you wish you could just forget. Forget the pain, the anguish, the loneliness, the despair. But in the case of James Sunderland, no matter how much he wished, no matter how hard he tried, there was simply no way to escape the terrible truth of what his life, and indeed he himself, had become. Inevitably, as much as he tried to resist it, James would eventually have to accept the horror of what he had done. What follows is a chronicle of James' descent into the abyss and the tragic truth behind his deeply troubled psyche. If you took one look at James Sunderland, you would probably think of him as someone who was wholly unremarkable. If you passed him in the street, you may have cast a passing glance at his weary expression, then immediately resumed your journey and not given him a second thought. Heroes are supposed to be people of character and distinction. A big bushy beard, barrel chest, distinct features and a focused, strong demeanor. Or perhaps someone with a cape, clean-shaven chin and superhuman abilities. But upon seeing James, the very last conclusion you would ever come to is that he was in any way heroic. They say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but in James' case, you'd be fully justified in doing so and making the conclusions you would naturally make. And that's because James Sunderland is not a hero. Not even close. At the beginning of Silent Hill 2, James is 29 years old. He is a Caucasian male who possesses no distinct features or defining traits. If you think of a generic white guy, James may well be the first person who pops into your head. If you looked up generic white guy in the dictionary, you would see James' plain, though not unhandsome face right next to the definition. So what about his background story? According to the law, James was quite the athlete in his school days, excelling in track and field in particular. Beyond this though, little to nothing is known about his upbringing. So what about his career? James once worked as a clerk for a small business, most likely in his hometown of Ashfield, Massachusetts, which is about a half a day's drive away from the town of Silent Hill. But although he may be mild-mannered and mostly courteous to those around him, James is entirely unremarkable. He is everyone, and therefore he is no one. One day while at a house party that was being hosted by a friend of his, James met Mary Shepherd. After a little small talk, the two hit it off, igniting a passionate romance that eventually matured into a happy, stable relationship. For perhaps the first time in his life, James had something to look forward to, and someone to come home to. Mary would often play the piano, and James was her #1 fan. Even though Mary wasn't particularly musical, James still loved to sit and hear her play. At some point the couple were married, and after reading about Silent Hill in a brochure, James and Mary made the decision to vacation there. While relaxing in their room at the Lakeview Hotel, James made a video recording of Mary. In it, Mary remarked,
"I don't know why, but I just love it here. It's so peaceful."
Having fallen in love with the town, Mary made James promise that he would bring her back to Silent Hill one day. When the time finally came to leave, James ended up leaving the videotape behind in their room, and soon thereafter, the couple forgot about it completely. But whatever joy the pair once had in their life would soon become a distant memory after Mary contracted a rare terminal illness. The disease was so debilitating that it caused Mary's mind to deteriorate significantly, leading her to become increasingly hostile and unpredictable. The once kind and doting wife that had brought so much happiness into James' life was now prone to violent mood swings. James would do his best to calm her down and console her, but Mary would lash out at him, breaking down in tears, screaming at James to get away from her. In the next moment, Mary would begin apologizing profusely, begging James not to leave and to stay by her side. This shift in Mary's personality obviously had a profound effect on James, so he began searching for answers to his and his wife's plight. Mary's doctor informed James that she would almost certainly die within 3 years and that there was no cure available for her condition. Unable to accept this outcome, James challenged the doctor's assessment, but after realizing that he would be of no further use, James left the doctor's offices, disgusted that he would simply sit idly by and allow Mary to die. James then decided to carry out his own research, sifting through medical journals in a desperate attempt to shed some light on Mary's affliction. But as hard as he tried, all of his efforts were ultimately in vain as James was unable to discover anything that would even begin to make a difference to his wife's situation. After she was admitted to hospital, James began to withdraw from Mary, visiting her less and less due to her worsening condition. Her mood swings had simply become too violent and unpredictable, and he was at a loss as to what to do. Then, after some time, Mary passed away, leaving James hopelessly lost in life. His beautiful, kind-hearted wife was dead. Following Mary's passing, James fell into a deep depression. Every time he woke up, he would immediately remember what had happened and that his wife was no longer alive. Then one day, out of nowhere, James received a letter from Mary, which read, "In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting for you. James was flabbergasted. Mary had died 3 years ago. Surely there was no way it could be her. But even if by some impossibly small chance it was in fact Mary, James decided it would be worth driving to Silent Hill to investigate further. On his way to the town, James found that the main road was blocked. After staring deeply at his own reflection in the mirror in a restroom, he made his way into Silent Hill via a hiker's trail. Along the way, he encountered a young woman by the name of Angela Orozco who had also recently arrived in the town. She warned James that there was something wrong with Silent Hill and its surrounding areas, but James dismissed this and continued along his path undeterred. Upon arriving in the town, he soon discovered that everything was palled in a grey fog and that there were hostile, monstrous creatures all over the place. In spite of this, James remained determined to find Mary by figuring out what she meant by special place. James then entered an abandoned apartment complex where he came across Eddie Dombrowski. He also saw Angela again, who was visibly distraught and suicidal. Following this, he encountered Pyramid Head, a humanoid monster wearing a gigantic metal helmet. Managing to evade this terrible creature, James then ran into a young girl by the name of Laura who knew Mary and accused James of not truly loving his late wife. After eventually reaching Rosewater Park, James met Maria, who looked almost identical to Mary. Fearing for her own safety, Maria accompanied James. The two then decided to pursue Laura as they were worried she would wind up getting hurt or killed. After entering Brookhaven Hospital, Maria went to rest in a patient's room as she claimed to have been suffering from a mild hangover. Later, after finding Laura and facing off against some monsters, James reunited with Maria. However, Pyramid Head then appeared and executed Maria as James looked on in horror. Although traumatized, James gathered himself and once again focused on finding Mary. After coming across some bizarre holes and secret entrances, James soon learned that he was somehow in Toluca prison. There he encountered an armed Eddie, and although he tried to reason with him, his efforts proved futile. After further exploring the prison, James came across Maria sitting inside a locked cell, somehow alive even though she had been brutally slain by Pyramid Head back at the hospital. She then shifted at random between two personalities, namely Maria and Mary. During their exchange, Maria provided James with some clues about Mary's special place and reminded him of the video he had made of Mary. After finding an alternate route to Maria's cell, James found her corpse lying still on the bed. Once again distraught, he then found Eddie, who was surrounded by dead bodies full of bullets. Eddie came to the conclusion that James was bullying him, so the two ended up fighting. James emerged victorious, causing the letter he had received from Mary to go blank. Later, James made his way to the Lakeview Hotel where he came across Laura. She proceeded to hand him a letter written by Mary, which claimed that Mary and Laura had become friends just 1 year ago. Confused by this, James found the tape that Maria had mentioned. After making his way to room 312 where he and Mary had once stayed, he inserted the tape into the VCR. James then watched the video which showed him smothering Mary to death with her pillow. He then realized that his wife hadn't simply passed, but that he had, out of guilt or anger or frustration, put an end to her life himself. Gutted, James watched as Laura entered the room. She asked him about Mary, and James told her the truth about what he had done. This obviously deeply upset Laura, who then ran away. Then James received a radio transmission from Mary in which she called out to him. After exiting the room, James discovered Angela near a stairwell that was on fire. He pleaded with her to come with him, but she instead turned and walked up the stairs and into the flames. Then in the hotel's lobby, James found Maria alive once again. Two Pyramid Heads stood alongside her and subsequently proceeded to execute her. Finally understanding who Maria was and what the Pyramid Heads were, James attacked them, causing the monsters to cease their actions and kill themselves using their own spears. James then made his way down a hallway where he heard a conversation that he had once had with Mary when she was still alive. She had lashed out at James in one of her mood swings, then immediately expressed remorse and begged James to reassure her that she wasn't going to die. And it was at this point that James finally met a woman who looked exactly like Mary. So what happened to James after this? While there are some theories about his fate, nothing is known concretely. But the sad truth is that James was not the hero in his story. He wasn't even an anti-hero. He was the villain all along. While he may have felt justified, and while Mary may have been close to death, it was still by his hand that she died. The thing is, James didn't actually learn anything new by traveling to Silent Hill. He had simply suppressed the truth the whole time. And while James was eventually forced to accept reality, it isn't known what actually became of him. In this way, James is without question one of the most tragic figures in gaming history. He was self-deluded, ineffectual, and unable to save any of the people he encountered in Silent Hill. James Sunderland was a murderer who finished off his wife before the illness could. Whether he was redeemed in any way for these heinous actions is unknown, but regardless, James is a tragic figure who lost everything he loved and simply gave in to his terrible fate in the end. And that, my friends, is the tragic tale of James Sunderland. What do you think of James as a character? Did he manage to redeem himself? Or was he just a delusional villain? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for daily gaming, VR and tech content. From me and the crew, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later!